There is so much to do in this episode. You're not even going to see my face. We're going right into it. So much to get to on our first Gaz on the Go in April. Let's start with Syracuse basketball. Orange fans like myself are upset, not because the team's season has come to an end after a Sweet 16 run. The Orange exceeded expectations from a month ago. Not only did they get to the tournament, they get to the second weekend. They're just flat out not good enough against Houston. The offense wasn't there. We can break down the game and talk about whether Coach Boeheim should have not taken Jesse Edwards out of the game. But nonetheless, the Houston Cougars are the better team, and Houston's going to the Final Four. So Syracuse had their opportunities, no doubt, but when we look back at the 2020-2021 season, a Sweet 16 season should be deemed a success for Orange fans. And just quickly on Jesse Edwards, boy, I don't want to put too much pressure on one guy, but when that game concluded, I thought, we've seen the history of Big Nen in Syracuse. Roddy Cycli, Rakeem Christmas, Rick Jackson, Arenze Onuaku, and the late Fab Mello. How much better they got year to year. If Jesse Edwards can get some offense to his game, Syracuse can be deadly next season and be a true contender for the national championship. Now, I thought that on Sunday, late Monday, until I didn't know who was on the roster anymore. And sure enough, player after player after player decides they're going to enter the transfer portal. For those that don't know, the transfer portal is a lot different than it used to be before. Players can go. You want to go play for another team? Bye-bye, see you later. And I do like that rule. I like that they can go bounce from spot to spot. Coaches can do it. Regular college students who aren't athletes can do it. Why can't athletes do it? So I'm fine with the open transfer portal. I believe it gives the athletes some power, and I'm all about it. But at one point this week, the only players we were positive that were going to be on the Syracuse basketball roster for the 2021-2022 season were Buddy Boeheim, because, well, he kind of knows the coach, Joseph Girard III, and Jesse Edwards. That was it. That was it. And the biggest thing that Syracuse fans got upset about was Kadari Richmond. And look, I'm a Central New York native. I've followed the Syracuse basketball program, like you probably listening right now. It is hard to truly compare the outrage from Syracuse basketball fans over this move. This is in the mix of when Syracuse basketball, recruiting-wise, didn't land Julius Hodge, and he had a fantastic career at NC State. This is a little bit like when Syracuse didn't land Nerlens Noel. Remember, he had the thing shaved in the back of his head, and Syracuse fans thought he might be coming? This is in the same category of when fans were upset when Dante Green and Chris McCullough left the program because everyone thought if you were a Syracuse fan, those players should come back to help out the program and improve their game for another season. That's the backlash we saw with Kadari Richmond because Syracuse fan believed he should have been on the court more. He should have been playing over Joseph Girard III. And trust me, as I'm talking to you right now, I'm taping this in Glenville and Schenectady area. The further east you get from the Carrier Dome, the more and more Joseph Girard III supporters you will find. So if you're listening to this in Western or Central New York, you're probably not a JG3 fan as you do when you get east in JG3's hometown. Sure, should Kadari Richmond have played more? Of course. He was productive. He was good on defense. He was an athlete. He could make plays and everything else. It just didn't happen. We're going to find out, like, that's the theme of this episode. Remember that old Nickelodeon show, What Would You Do? You know, remember that back in the 90s? That is the theme of this Gaz on the Go episode. What would you do if you were Kadari Richmond? How much would it take for you to not transfer? Would it take 25 minutes a game? 30? 35? What do you want? Like, if you think you're outplaying Joseph Girard III, then go somewhere else and prove it. If Coach Boeheim wants to prove something, he can look at last year's transfers and say, what did they do? How'd they perform? Jalen Carey and now Kadari Richmond back-to-back seasons have left the program. They can do that. But do we even remember the name Jalen Carey? What about Caleb Joseph? We've seen guards come through Syracuse, and we're supposed to be the next big thing. Remember, poor Caleb Joseph followed 3 NBA players. It was like cover the post standard before he played a single minute. He didn't finish his career with Syracuse. I think Kadari Richmond is fantastic, but he would have transferred no matter what because he wasn't getting the playing time. It was just going to happen. Joseph Girard III's their guy. Buddy Boeheim's their guy. I like my guy Samir Torrance, who's coming in. Shout out to him. for my former alma mater, Sacred Heart Preschool, now the Syracuse Academy of Science. Shout out to my girl Aggie and my man Petey. That's our alma mater, baby, the Syracuse Academy of Science, a.k.a. Sacred Heart Preschool. Torrance is coming. Spoiler alert, Jim Boeheim Jr. is probably coming too. That's the worst kept secret around. And we'll find out who else. I want to start calling that squad, by the way, with Torrance and Buddy Boeheim and Jim Boeheim Jr. and Joseph Girard III. Who knows? Maybe another New York kid will end up there. Can we call them the Empire Entourage? Because everybody who's going to be a contributor is going to be from the Empire State, New York. Just nobody end up being Turtle. That's it. Nobody wants to be the Turtle of the Empire Entourage. Syracuse basketball will be fine next season. Jesse Edwards develops an offensive game. Torrance is a contributor. We'll find out if some of these young players can be effective year one. Don't freak out about the transfer portal. Things will be fine in Syracuse. The Orange will be okay. Coach Boeheim will figure this out, and who knows? Maybe we'll be in the same spot next year. Wondering where Syracuse ends up. Maybe a 10, maybe an 11, and they'll make a run in the NCAA tournament. Speaking about the NCAA tournament, I love March Madness. Ooh, boy. I'd kind of like these games to be closer. Please? That's the thing. Gonzaga's rolling. Gonzaga's a monster favorite against UCLA. 14 points. I still can't believe this set. 18 points? On average, the Bulldogs are beating teams. They've been tough games to watch. We haven't had that buzzer beater finish. We haven't had that magical moment. What's been the best game in the NCAA tournament? Think about that for a second. We've seen, 50 plus games already in the NCAA tournament? And you'd probably struggle to name the best game of the entire tournament. Was it Arkansas and Texas Tech? Was it UCLA and Michigan? Not a lot of scoring in that game. I'm struggling to find out what the best game of the tournament was. I don't want to say March Madness has been disappointing because that sounds like a very spoiled answer by me because at least we got the NCAA tournament. I don't want to be that guy who says, it's boring, but this isn't going to be one that we go back on CBS and look through the highlight stuff. Doesn't feel like that. Is it too early to talk about Gonzaga as a GOAT? There it is. I'm only 5 episodes into Goz on the Go, and here comes a GOAT conversation. But in my lifetime, so the last 30 years, it's this Gonzaga team, 2015 Kentucky that gets all the way to undefeated and it loses to Wisconsin and Kaminsky in the Final Four. Maybe it tossed one of those Carolina teams in there from 05 or 09. I know Dan Walken wanted to talk about that 2018 Villanova team, but they didn't even win the Big East. My buddy Mike Camps brought up the 96 Kentucky team who had 9 NBA players, 9 on that 96 Kentucky team. Gonzaga's in the mix. And I love the conversation. I'll give credit where credit's due to ESPN's Pablo Torre, who said, don't forget about this. In that 1970s era Indiana team, who was the last team to go undefeated, remember, they played in a 32-team NCAA tournament. It was easier just flat out math-wise for that Indiana team to go undefeated. If Gonzaga can get this far, and the matchup with Baylor, if they do get Baylor in a title game, is going to be awesome. Maybe we should have canceled the season like we had in college football. It should have been Bama versus Ohio State. We would have saved a lot of time. They are in the discussion already as one of the great college basketball teams of the last 30 years. That's how good this Gonzaga team is. Can I just get some close games? Please. Can I get one of those things? Well, speaking about games, if you're a UAlbany football fan, that's coming to an end. Yes, the news in the Capital Region is that UAlbany football has decided to end their season. Their spring season is no longer going to be played. Coach Greg Gattuso cited to the media that it's because of injury concerns. And yeah, across the board, guys have been injured, including their star quarterback, Jeff Undercuffler, who I had such high expectations for going into this season. Undercuffler, if you don't follow UAlbany football, led FCS in passing touchdowns as a freshman in 2019. So the 2020 fall doesn't happen, but 2021 spring does. Again, back to our theme. What would you do if you were Coach Greg Gattuso, if you were Athletic Director Mark Benson? How would you handle the situation? Your team is crushed by injuries. You've got 6 or 7 impact guys not on the field for your final 2 games of the season. You got Delaware coming up. Delaware is ranked top 10 in the country. They are going to likely beat you by at least 2 touchdowns. You don't have players on the field who are going to be impact players. Of course, you feel bad for the guys who start to have the clock tick on their eligibility. But why take the field? Your fans can't be there, although there's a possibility that maybe later this month, Governor Cuomo could have opened it up. But you look towards the fall, when you have more impactful games scheduled, more nationally televised games. They get the matchup in-state with Syracuse coming up in September. Why take the field? Now, look, I get it. Your competitors, your athletes, you want to play. Every player who has a roster spot wants to be on the field. But when we talk about what's best for the sake of the program, not taking the field is best for the UAlbany football program. If you want to be focused on the future, if you want players to have that chance for the NFL, or you want to have that marquee victory, or you want to say in 2022 and 2023, UAlbany football is in a better place, it's decisions like this. Tough decisions, really hard decisions to tell your players. I'm with Coach Cattuso. Give me a reason besides just pride and competition that you take the field for the final 2 games of the season. Your impact players are hurt, projected for the rest of the year because of COVID pauses and everything else. Maybe you're putting some of these players at risk. These guys might just not be flat out ready because of the ways in which their season's changed. Look towards the fall. And this whole spring football thing, man, going back through history, it's hard to say Division I. I'm talking FBS. Now this is FCS, but FBS got it right. I never liked that term because if someone got COVID-19 and is affected for the rest of their lives, you can't say, well, they got it right because they played the games. Remember when Ohio State had a mysterious thing happen in the Big Ten title game after the Big Ten changed the rules for them? It's easy to say they got it right at the FBS level for playing in the fall because they had the games happen. I just say that now because I haven't watched any of the spring football, like any, at the FCS level. It has not been happening. To me, now maybe you're a football fan, if you've been loving FCS football, I just haven't had it have the same type of impact with March Madness and the NBA and all the other things going on in the sports world with opening day, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. I haven't watched it. So spring football did not work for the FCS level as much as we had hoped it would have. Speaking about UAlbany, by the way, did you hear the news involving Tehoka Nanticoke? And by the way, did I butcher his name one final time before? There is no athlete that I have butchered a name more of ever covering than Nanticoke. I'm not even going to go with the first name again. I don't need to continue to put L's up on my list. Tehoka Nanticoke. There you go. One more time. If you missed this, he was truly the biggest recruit I've ever seen in the history of college lacrosse. 2017's number 1 player. Again, another guy who's on covers of magazines and more before he ever plays a single minute in college. I know the Powell brothers are in the conversation. I can already hear the yells from Central New York. Guys, what about the Powells? Okay, put whatever Powell brother you want, and then this guy right in that mix. He was that big of a recruit, shows up to UAlbany. The Capital Region's going nuts, and now he's no longer on the team. It just didn't work. Let's go back to it one more time. What would you do if you were Coach Scott Marr and you had this happen? 2019, suspended, and then reinstated because Nanticoke goes to Instagram and posts that sticker stringing company. And whether or not that's an NCAA violation, maybe likeness and image stuff in the future won't even be talked about because it'll just be legal. But that happens. And then he doesn't show up in the fall, and then he just plays in 5 games. Now he is a senior. And then more controversy this season. There's a fight that breaks out on March 20th, and he gets suspended. And then ESPN content associate Chris Jastrzemski has reported following the dismissal of Nanticoke that it was because he was yelling at teammates and coaches during the Stony Brook game last weekend. What are you supposed to do if you're Scott Marr? You've given this guy every opportunity. I feel like the Antonio Brown thing is too hard of a comparison, but I've struggled hours leading up to our taping tonight of when it wasn't Antonio Brown. And I'm talking Antonio Brown for the Raiders, like time after time after time. They gave him every opportunity to be successful, and he had so much talent and so much hype around him. But at one point, there is a final straw. This was the final straw. Did he live up to the hype? No. He didn't. There was too much talked about off the field and not actual lacrosse action from Nanticoke than actual performance on the field. I feel for the Great Danes. I feel for the fans who want to see him have an all-time great career, like one of the Thompson brothers, like one of the Powells. We can go through the legends of lacrosse. We thought this guy could do something that's never been done before, and maybe he'll go on to have a nice professional career. Who knows? Maybe he'll play for the NLL Albany franchise that's on the way. Maybe that will be his thing. But it never really truly worked out the way Albany sports fans had hoped for his career. By the way, the Great Danes are 4-2. They host UMass Lowell in the America East game on Saturday. And one more topic before we get to our MLB preview with my pal Justin Lana. The NFL Pro Days. Enough. Guys, enough with the NFL Pro Days. There was no combine this year. So we didn't have to watch the Underwear Olympics. We didn't have to break down bench presses in 40 times and everything. Enough with the Zach Wilson stuff. Please. And Jet fan, this is not to tick you off. But I had this, and this is a true story. My guy Levac will confirm it. You can tweet at him at the Jeff Levac if you want. I have never in 6 years voting for the Heisman Trophy ever slipped to the Levac. Ever. Between all the wings and beers and fun and everything, I've never slipped to him except once. I did this past year. So we were at a golf course in the Saratoga region, and if you follow us, you know what it is, and hopefully we'll be talking about that golf course very soon in that place that has some great Bloody Marys very soon. So we were out watching a Bills game with the Bills Mafia, and Levac was asking me about, he's like, look, let's say the number one pick isn't Trevor Lawrence. This is right around like when I think Lawrence had gotten COVID. He's like, if it's not Lawrence, like who's the best player in the country right now? Just like if you had to pick. And he was just pressuring me, and I'm like, I know he's not trying to get my Heisman vote out of me, but he's just asking who the best player is. So I said the best player in the country right now is Zach Wilson from BYU. And if you look at the stats, he was. Going into November, there was no better player in college football than Zach Wilson. Well, the reason why he was the best and the reason why he was better than Ohio State's Justin Fields is because he had played 5 more games than Justin Fields. Ohio State in the Big Ten was not going to play this season. So now all of a sudden, here's the thing with Zach Wilson. He was great this year. But remember, the 2 games he had his best games of was against Boise State, who was finished 5-2, was nowhere close to the Broncos. They made it off of the old years of the blue turf and everything. I'm talking like a traditional Bronco team that's in the national discussion. They kind of banked on that name being ranked high. I watched that game. I made a lot of money on that game. I think I made more money on that game than any college football game this year betting. I bet on the adults, and it worked. So that's one of his best games. And the other one's in the bowl game against Central Florida. Josh Heupel, their coach, is leaving. So those are the 2 best games of his career. So we're going to say Zach Wilson against a bad Boise State team and a UCF team who had his coach out the door is a good enough reason to put him over Justin Fields, who had 6 touchdowns against Clemson, who was a Heisman Trophy finalist in 2019, who was the number 1 high school recruit in the country. So we're going to ignore his success in 2019 at Ohio State. We're going to ignore Fields leading his team to the title game. We're going to ignore everything Fields has done. But what we're going to do is tell you how great Zach Wilson is. But in the opposite way, we're going to ignore that Zach Wilson has had shoulder surgery. We're going to ignore that Zach Wilson has had hand surgery. And that in one of his seasons, I believe it's 2018, Zach Wilson, half his touchdowns came against UMass. Oh, and he only had 12 touchdowns that season. We're going to ignore in 2019 that he wasn't even in the conversation as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So Wilson's been playing since a true freshman. So we're going to not talk about how he was on the field in 2018 and 2019. And we're going to focus on him ripping it up in 2020. But we're going to say, well, that's why he's at a Justin Fields. What are we doing? Stop. Because we didn't have a combine, because we didn't know Trevor Lawrence is locked in at number 1, we don't have to make a storyline out of everything. Oh, it killed me. It killed me going through this pro day stuff. Make it easy. We're going to talk more draft throughout the month. It's Trevor Lawrence 1. It's Justin Fields 2. It's Zach Wilson 3. There you go. Jags, Jets, Niners. And if you're a Jet fan, you don't like my pick, at Tom Goz, TOMGOZZ on Twitter. Instagram, getting there with Goz and more. Jet fan, if you don't like my take, please. You got about 4 more weeks to convince me that Zach Wilson's your guy. I don't buy it. I don't get how in the world he's ahead of Justin Fields. Well, let's get into Major League Baseball, our preview with our guy, Justin Lada. I am joined now for our Major League Baseball preview with the man who eats, sleeps, and breathes baseball, my pal Justin Lada joining us. And Justin, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the American League East and first the New York Yankees. Capital Region sports fan, New York sports fan, and the Yankees are a national brand. They're a worldwide brand. When we talk about the 2021 New York Yankees, what are realistic expectations for the Bronx Bombers?
I mean, they can compete for the division, but it's going to take a lot of health and guys bouncing back in the rotation. Their entire season hinges on the rotation. We've seen in the last couple of years that health has been a big deal for them, between Aaron Hicks, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge. They've had a lot of guys who have, had injuries. Obviously, Gary Sanchez has struggled, but behind Garrett Cole, there's just a lot of uncertainty in that rotation. Jameson Taillon hasn't pitched in like 2 years. Corey Kluber hasn't pitched in 2 years. I mean, he threw an inning last year. That was it. And he was out most of 2019. Domingo Germán didn't pitch last year. Jordan Montgomery had Tommy John. And, they're also missing, Zach Britton right now and Justin Wilson from that bullpen. And Clark Schmidt and Luis Severino aren't back. Or Severino won't be back till later in the year. I mean, D.V. Garcia can come up and help them. They have some of their younger arms, but I think their entire season rests on that pitching staff. If Taillon and Kluber can kind of throw it back to what they did pre-2019, they're going to be good. But it's a huge gamble on those guys being healthy and leading that staff behind Garrett Cole.
If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, do yourself a favor, by the way, and later on after you're done listening, head over to our YouTube channel. Just search Getting There with Goz, Gozilla Media, and you'll see the odds to win the division. Let's call it from a local casino. I'm not going to promote them until they start spending here on Gozilla Media. So a local casino's odds in their sports book for what they do for the division, all those odds will be up there as we talk about these teams. Yeah, I agree with a lot of stuff you said there about the Yankees. Look, we're going to have the June and July and August days that a New York fan's going to complain about an outing on a Wednesday from Giancarlo Stanton. And there's going to be a day in the summer where Sanchez is bad defensively. That stuff's already coming. And hopefully, because he's entertaining and a fun player to watch, we get a full season of Aaron Judge. Because what his future is with the Yankees is complicated. I'm sure we'll cover that in some summer episodes of money and the outfield and everything else. I want to focus in on Corey Kluber because you're familiar with him. He played for the Indians. There is going to be a lot of pressure on him because of those changes in that rotation. I don't want to say he's as much as a World Series or bust type pitcher, but it seems like he can truly be that difference to get over the hump for these Yankees in 2021.
He can be. I mean, he's shown he can carry the load before. In Cleveland, things kind of soured for him. People kind of forgot what he did for them in the playoffs. I think everything went downhill for him in 2017. He had a back injury, and the Yankees beat him twice in that ALDS after going down 0-2. He was good in 2018, and then he was off to a bad start in 2019, and then he had the shoulder injury last year. And the thing with Kluber is I've seen a lot of this around this spring is that, the scouting reports were that he was really trying to, ramp up to get to 92, 93. Like it was a lot of effort for him to get past the 99 at 1 mile an hour mark with this fastball. That's definitely concerning, but if he can sit 91, 92 and touch 93 with the sinker, he could still be an effective pitcher. He was never a guy who needed to throw. I mean, he never threw 96, 97. I think the hardest he threw in Cleveland was 95. So he's never been dependent on velocity. As long as he can spot the sinker inside the lefties and away from righties, and he throws that curveball or slurve, whatever it is, nobody knows what it really is. And that's the best part is that he can manipulate the shape of that breaking ball. As long as he can do that, he can be an effective pitcher. If you're expecting him to be an ace, like you're not going to get Cy Young Corey Kluber back. And this is what we tried to explain to a lot of Cleveland fans in 2019 or 2020 when they traded him to Texas and they only got Delano DeShields and Emmanuel Clase is you weren't trading the Cy Young version of Corey Kluber. That version is gone. But if you can get a guy who can throw 175 to 180 innings and give you an ERA south of 4, you're in good shape. And I think that's what he can still do. But it's really going to be dependent on his command being sharp because he does not have that extra tick of velocity, and he's going to have to rely on that breaking ball. That was a big knock too in Cleveland. Is he tried so hard to just live off that sinker, and nobody can understand why he wasn't throwing the breaking ball. And if he can go back to throwing the breaking ball 20% of the time, I think he can still be extremely effective, and he can handle. I mean, maybe the year off last year helps him, right? Maybe not pitching last year kind of refreshes his arms. There's some optimism there, I guess.
The rest of the division kind of looks like this. I look at the Tampa Bay Rays and I call them the Virginia Cavaliers of baseball. The Cavaliers in basketball ruin college basketball because it's boring and too defensive and hard to watch. The Rays have all these openers and I can't stand Rays baseball. I think it hurts the sport. The Baltimore Orioles, I love them. They have a 0% chance, according to MLB.com, to make the postseason. I like calling the Toronto Blue Jays the best Little League root for team. What I'm talking about, whatever the generation is past Gen Z, like if you have somebody who's a niece or a nephew younger than 12, they should root for the Blue Jays because they have such young players that are fun to watch, like Biggio and Guerrero and Bichette. Now, it makes all of us feel old because we all remember their dads and everybody else.
We were 12. We
right,
watched that.
Exactly. And they got George Springer now, too, who's awesome to watch. So the Blue Jays are a fun team that I think a lot of younger baseball fans should really get into. Let's sit on the Boston Red Sox. Alex Cora is back. And I remember where I was when I said they never even should have gotten rid of him. They should have just let him sit out the year and not do this weird thing they did in 2020. The impact of Cora coming back, and could the Red Sox be a team that maybe surprises and does better than the expectations because of some of the changes within that team?
I don't think they have the pitching to surprise, honestly. Like I don't trust anybody in their rotation at this moment, and I don't trust that bullpen. I think their pitching is going to be, quite honestly, terrible this year. They've got enough hitters for sure to be a pain, but I don't trust that pitching whatsoever, and I can't imagine, like, because how good their hitting is, and they still have Nate Eovaldi, but who knows about his health. Like, I could still see him finishing third in the division, but I don't see them competing for a playoff spot. That pitching is just extremely suspect to me.
Totally with you. There are going to be games where they give up double digits. Like, they're going to lose games at some points in the summer, like 11-3, and they're going to have some random people on the mound. Red Sox fan, get ready for a summer of who the hell is pitching? Like, who is this? Did they pull him out of Fenway Park's, like, green monster crowd? It's insane what might go on for the Red Sox. Totally with you on that. Let's flip over to the NL East, and it's one of the most surprising things, especially for people who like to invest in sports, where I looked at these numbers. I've got the Braves at plus 120 to win the division and the Mets at plus 140. I know other casinos have the Mets above the Braves or even with the Braves to win the division. A Braves team who I believe has won the division 4 years in a row, weren't too far off from a World Series. That's a lot of love for the Mets in the preseason. Is it deservingly so? Why is there so much preseason love for this New York Met team?
Well, they've got a superstar shortstop now, who I've heard of before.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's right. Another Indian we're talking about. Right.
Had to start there. Yeah, their lineup is super deep. That lineup might be, man, there's some good lineups in the NL and the Dodgers and the Padres, but man, that lineup might be one of the best in baseball. And they have some pitching depth, like Carlos Carrasco's hurt. He'll be back at some point. They'll get Noah Syndergaard back. They'll get Seth Lugo back eventually, like this summer. If the pitching they have right now can kind of carry them to the summer when they get some reinforcements, they'll be in great shape. But man, this is a competitive division. Like, I can maybe not the Phillies. I don't know if I can make a case for the Phillies. My three favorite teams in this division are the Braves, the Mets, and the Marlins. I think the Marlins, like, I don't think they're going to win the division, but if you want to throw some money on them and, you know, hope you score big, I would go for it. The Marlins, you're talking about like fun teams. They're the funnest team that no one talks about. Like, the Blue Jays are fun, the Padres are fun. The Marlins are sneaky fun if you're into young up and coming players. I think they could surprise people in this division. And if, like I said, if you want to throw some money and hope you get a little bit lucky, throw a few down on them and see what happens.
25-1 shot to win the division, and they won a playoff series last year. Like, even I had to go back and I'm like, wait, did they beat the Cubs? Right? Like, oh, that happened in real life last year. Am I remembering that correctly? That this Marlin team pulled that off. I look at the Braves, by the way, and I think it comes down to that rotation. We've talked a lot about pitching, but rightfully so. We know how important it is. Ian Anderson, Capital Region Zone, Shen High School Zone. Ian Anderson is still eligible to win the National League Rookie of the Year award, which is amazing to think about that and how good he was last season for the Braves. He's the difference. You mentioned this division. Like, Philadelphia, when they signed Bryce Harper, they were supposed to be the next team up. Washington has won a World Series, and as you just said, the Marlins were the surprise of the season in 2020, battling through COVID and everything else. Even if you're just a casual baseball fan, the best games of the season are likely going to come out of the NL East this year.
Yeah, I have plans to watch the Marlins a lot this year. I'll watch the Nationals somewhat, but I will watch the Braves and I will watch the Mets, obviously, but I will definitely be keeping an eye on the Marlins. That might be the tightest division. I mean, the Dodgers and Padres, I think, will be the closest race of any two teams all season. But if you want like the deepest division, I think this is it. Like even though I don't really care for the Phillies pitching, they still have Nolan Wheeler. They're okay, and then they have a decent lineup. And the Nationals still have a pretty good rotation, and they did get Josh Bell. So this is a division like I would watch all year. Absolutely.
So you've mentioned these teams twice, so I'm just going to flip over to the NL West here quickly. You mentioned the Dodgers and the Padres. I love this top of this division too. It feels to me, because of the additions of San Diego in the offseason and what they brought in, and of course the defending World Series champions in the Dodgers, these are the two best teams in baseball going into the season, and they're in the same division.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, that they really are. Like, they could easily both win 95 plus games. And they both have tons of depth. They have good established stations. They have deep lineups, and they both still have really good farm systems. Like, to even add, like, it's amazing. These two teams were playoff teams a year ago, and they went out and they made their teams even better. I plan on staying up late a lot this summer to watch these two play. It's going to be a really fun rivalry, and I think it's going to be heated. You're going to see some tense moments from the two of them.
These are the marquee primetime and national matchups you want. I want to dive deeper into Padres Dodgers, but I'm going to hold off until the end of this. That might be a nice tease of what I'm going to do with those two teams later on. All right, is there one team, any division, any league, that casual baseball fan here as we tape this in March and it's going to hit in April right as the season gets underway, that Justin Lada says, look out for this team. They will be the surprise of 2021.
I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but if you want like the next team on its way up, it's got to be the Seattle Mariners. I think that they've got interesting pitching. They've got some prospect better, and they've got a couple prospects that are going to be in the lineup at some point this year. I think the Mariners, they won't finish in the basement. Now, like I said, they can compete for 500, and I think they can show that maybe by 2022 they can finally break that 20-year playoff drought. I was in middle school the last time the Mariners made the playoffs, guys.
Middle school. Think about that. What you just brought up there is exactly what I was going to say about the Mariners. Not only is it a 20-year playoff drought, there is no active professional North American franchise that has gone longer without making the postseason than the Seattle Mariners. That is the team right now that's looking to break that curse. We have a common friend, our pal Brady Farkas. He's a Seattle Mariner fan. I know he so badly wants to see his M's in the postseason, and maybe for his sake, his sanity, they will break through this year. Interesting team to look out for. Look out for Seattle, what they could do. I'm tempted by the Phillies. I think the Phillies are my team. I always want to, like, the Cardinals aren't a team to look out for because the Cardinals are just always consistently good. I think the Phillies are going to find somehow some way to be more competitive in that NL East and make a move with Harper and everything else. And I would like to see Joe Girardi get some love for Philadelphia and everything else. I think the Phillies are going to be my team to be the breakout. Like you mentioned, Wheeler and everybody else, they just got to get a little bit more. Got to get a couple, one-run games. It's a huge stat. Years ago, that those one-run games, I remember that Oriole team that got to the ALCS was all about one-run wins. That's what Philadelphia needs to be, the breakout team. All right, let's get your World Series pick. I'm going to go first, though, because I already got my graphic. That's the only reason I'm not letting you go first, because it's already up on the screen here. I have the Yankees and the Padres in the World Series. I got Yankees and Padres. I don't know who's going to be the team that tests New York in the postseason out of the American League. You could say Chicago, but Chicago is now dealing with injuries, and I don't know if the White Sox have proven it yet. You could say Tampa Bay, but they aren't better than the 2020 Tampa Bay Rays. So they're not a threat. Is Houston better? They lost George Springer. I just can't find the threat to New York in the American League. So I would go the New York Yankees coming out of the AL, and we're going to see Dodgers and Padres. We both agree on this. The best battles in baseball are coming up. I would like to see Kershaw choke it in the postseason. Everyone gave Kershaw. I think Kershaw chokes it in the postseason. Machado blasts a home run. San Diego is not only good this season, but they're better in the future. So give me the Padres and the Yankees. And I think San Diego redeems themselves from 20 plus years ago when the Bronx Bombers played that Tony Gwynn team in the World Series. This time, San Diego, the Padres get their first franchise World Series championship. They get it done. The Chargers are no longer there. The Clippers are no longer there. That's for throwback fans. They got one team in San Diego now, and the Padres get it done and win this year's World Series.
You're gonna love and hate my pick, guys. I agree with you. The Padres are gonna win the World Series. But I'm going to pick your least favorite team, the Rays, to be back there against them. And
wow.
The Padres are going to beat the Rays this year.
Why? Why Tampa?
Tampa? They just find a way to squeeze out of. They just find a way to squeeze all the juice out of their pitching. They got Rich Hill, Michael Wacha, and they're going to do something crazy with them. They're going to turn Chris Archer's career back around. Colin McHugh is the guy that fits them. I still love that lineup. They just find those ways to win. They have guys like Wander Franco is going to be up maybe this year. They've still got prospects, out of every position that could be up. I think they'll find a way to get through. Like you said, the American League is incredibly weak. There are 4 teams in the National League that I would pick to win the World Series before I pick one American League team. Every American League team has some major flaw. And you can see the Dodgers, the Padres, the Braves, the Mets all be World Series contenders in the American League. I know it's a cluster, and I think the Rays will be enough of a pain to get through the American League again.
Look at this. We both agree on our champions, and we just disagree on who's coming out of the AL East to represent the American League. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at JL_baseball. You can tweet at him, as he's told us before. He likes to tweet a lot, so get in on his tweets. Tell him how dare you pick against the Yankees or Red Sox or one of your favorite teams. You can do that. This is it. The episode getting there with Goz on the go. All that stuff combined into this Thursday episode, your Major League Baseball preview. We talked about a lot of other stuff before that, college basketball and more. We'll catch you next week. Justin, appreciate you as always, man.
Hey, it was good to talk to you.